across the street from the King David Hotel right there. And it's October 7th. It is the 1-year anniversary of the terrible tragedy that took place in southern Israel just 1 year ago. And it probably would bear to remind us all what exactly happened that day. The problem is I can't really describe it to you without getting myself, banned permanently from YouTube, because it's more horrific than can even be described. I was in Armenia on October 7th when I got a call from the news director from CBN, and he said, "Go to Israel, there's a massive attack." And I said, "There's always attacks in Israel. What's the big deal?" He said, "No, this is different." And then I went and looked up on the news and saw what was happening and said, wow, he's right. So I immediately flew from Yerevan to here in Jerusalem, and ended up spending the next 4 months here. Was here and was one of the first journalists that was allowed to go down to the south and enter some of the kibbutzim that had been attacked. The things that I saw down there, like I said, I can't even describe to you on this venue because they are not fit for television. But suffice it to say that Hamas not only murdered 1,200 people on that day, but they degraded and they defiled them. They weren't there just to pillage and to steal and to destroy, but they were there to how do you even describe it? Commit unspeakable acts of evil. That's what they were there to do. And as I showed up down there, there were still cadavers around and body parts and things like that. That they were still cleaning up the mess 2 days later. Matter of fact, there were still militants that were roaming around the countryside. And so there was a lot of fear and a lot of suspicion. And within the first couple of weeks, I had weapons pulled on me multiple times because people wanted to know who everybody was. And if you showed up and started filming things, they got a little sketchy. It was an incredible time. Everything was closed. Everybody stayed home. The only things that were open were like the pizza places here in Jerusalem. I ate a lot of pizza those first couple of weeks. And it was a life-changing experience for everybody who went through it. 1 year later, things have gotten better and they've gotten worse. What I mean by that is people have learned to accept the new normal. They've learned to go about their daily lives, go back to school in most cases, go back to their jobs in most cases. The restaurants are back open again. There's lots of people that are out shopping and going to the beach and that sort of thing. But at the same time, the number of hostile incursions from Israel's neighbors has continuously increased. As a matter of fact, just in the last week, the number of attacks from Israel's enemies has spiked, I guess you'd say, about 4.5 times, about 450% over the average of the last 11 months. Just a few moments ago, here in Jerusalem, we were sitting and talking with a Jewish man over here, and all of a sudden we heard a bunch of explosions going off in the distance. And we started looking at our phones. I had been feeling my phone vibrating for a few minutes, and I had checked, and oh yeah, it's more incoming. But the majority of the incoming is coming from the north, and it's really only affecting the northern part of the country. So here in Jerusalem, we don't get much, and we certainly didn't have an alarm go off or anything. So when we heard a bunch of explosions with no alarms going off, we were concerned and looked up, and as it turned out, there was a missile that they believe was fired from Yemen just a few moments ago that caused the entire central part of Israel to come under a missile warning. Now, I think the explosions we heard were the interceptors going up to take out that missile. We don't have any news at this time of any injuries or deaths or damage. And at the end of this live, I want to talk about the incredible number of miracles that we have seen over the last year. It's absolutely mind-boggling, all of the miracles that have happened. And so one tired mama is asking, is Oman involved? No, Oman is not involved. Yemen apparently fired a ballistic missile at Israel just a few moments ago. But they've been doing that for quite some time. Now today, we're here with a tour that I brought over of our viewers. As a matter of fact, they're all sitting around right over there. Hello. And waiting for me to get finished so we can go to dinner. And they're a group of very intrepid travelers who wanted to come here and stand with Israel on October 7th, to stand here for the anniversary and say, we support you. So today, in the attempt to try to do something meaningful and to make it a meaningful day, we got on the bus, we drove down to the northern border of the Gaza Strip. There's an overlook there that I've done some videos from before. And we went down, you can stand on that overlook and you can look into Gaza and you can see inside Beit Hanun and see the damage that's taken place there. There's evidence in Sderot, the town where the overlook is situated, of the rocket fire that they have endured from Gaza throughout this conflict. And so we got in our bus and we drove down there. We walked up onto this overlook, and it was fascinating to stand there and watch. It's like having a front row seat to the war. There were jets overhead, there were airstrikes happening, and we got to watch that in real time. And I would say that many people who were there would tell you that it was pretty powerful to see. Anybody want to come over and talk for a second? Anybody want to come over and, Scott, you want to come tell me what it's like? So I want to bring one of our travelers on, my good friend Scott Estep, and have him tell you a little bit about what that was like. Here's your microphone. Let's see if we can get this connected. Okay. All right, we're on. So Scott Estep, former Army colonel, and you've not been to Israel before, right? This is your first time?
First time.
What's your sense been so far?
It's amazing. There's no lines, but it's completely safe. The people here need us to be here so badly. I mean, every shop you buy something and it just makes them tear up.
You know, yeah, it really does. It's amazing. Every time you go buy something, the shopkeeper like breaks out into tears. At the jewelry store where some of the ladies bought jewelry, I guess they said that he hasn't had sales in 5 months. Mm. How do you support your family? And not only that, but then going down to the south today and getting the chance to actually look at Gaza. What was that like for you?
Well, I didn't make it down.
Oh, that's right. No, you hit. I forgot.
My 35th wedding anniversary, yes. So we stayed here.
On October 7th.
Yeah.
That's right. So today, knowing that what these people have been through, what's your, how does it strike you, the resilience of the people?
It's quite amazing. Just I was said to someone earlier that the children of Israel are less afraid than the people of America, of what's happening here. And I know that there's a lot of bad places. There's a lot of areas that aren't safe, but Jerusalem is very safe. And I think that it is the people seems to be nothing to them, other than there's a great deal of sadness. I mean, being the anniversary of October 7th, you know, if you say it, I mean, some of the shopkeepers won't even write the date down. They won't even, you know, they don't. They,
Wow.
Yeah.
So when we went to, today, we got a chance to go to the Nova Music Festival, the site where more than 300 young people were murdered on October 7th. And today it's a memorial. And there's just this forest of stakes with their photographs on them. And you just wander through this and all their pictures, and it's really overwhelming. But I got a chance to talk to some of the people there. And one thing that a guy I talked to really stood out to me. He said, you know, there are a lot of people in Israel who, there's a small minority in Israel who want the government to just give in to the terrorist demands, do whatever they ask to try to get back at least some of our hostages, they say. But at the same time, they know that by doing so, they would ensure that there would be another October 7th sometime in the future. And that dilemma exists inside every Israeli. He said that's not a division among the Israelis. It's a dilemma inside each one of us that we all have to wrestle with. And most of the people I talked to, even though they kind of struck me as they were the kind of people that would probably be on the left of the spectrum, said, even though I wish we'd do whatever we could to get these people back, I know that the right thing to do is to keep pressing and keep pushing until we wipe out Hamas and make it so that they can never do this again. Have you gotten that sense too?
Completely. I think that a vocal minority says, okay, anything to get the people back. But I think most of the people, and I have purposely spoken to people about it, most of them believe anything to get them back means we have to do the right thing to make it not happen again, you know, and hopefully in that we can get them back.
Right.
But there's not going to be, it's not going to be this magic, we get them back and everything's perfect.
Yeah.
That's it. It means failure.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And these people are determined, they will not fail. They're determined people.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. So, like I say, we went down to that site today, and we stopped for a while at the site of the Nova Music Festival. Now, I want to point out that several things that stand out to you when you go down to the south. First of all, there are bomb shelters everywhere. The town of Sderot has more bomb shelters per capita than any place on planet Earth. And for good reason. When the rockets from Gaza came in, you had like 7 seconds to get to a shelter. And so they just put them everywhere, up and down the streets. They're all over inside every playground, inside each house. It's amazing to drive through there and think, this is how people live. They live where they have to dive into a shelter at any moment, and they stay there. They keep living there. And then you go down to where the Nova Music Festival took place. We had to pass the kibbutz Be'eri to get there. I was, as I said, one of the first journalists that was allowed into the kibbutz Be'eri, and it was horrific. What I saw there, I can't describe to you, other than to tell you that the worst thing about it was all of the little children's toys that were spread around in the front yard. Those little colorful plastic toys, little ridey toys, little big wheels and the wagons and things like that. My kids had all those, and it just reminded me of my children. And so to see that juxtaposed with all of this blood everywhere on everything, it kind of brought it home to me. Like, what if that were my family? What if those were my kids? And you get a sense that this is absolute depravity. This is absolute evil. And there's no other way to describe it. How could it be anything else? Since the war started, the world has moved on. You know, we've got our own problems in the United States. We got plenty of things to worry about with the upcoming elections and the hurricanes and the immigration issues and all that. All of those are super important. But that has caused Americans to sort of maybe tune out a little bit to what's going on in Israel. The people here have been facing this every single day, and they've been watching it escalate more and more and more. But I think in watching it escalate, they've also seen it improving, in that as it's escalated, the IDF has been actually making serious gains against their enemies. They've been reshaping the dynamics in the Middle East because they've wiped out the entire chain of command of Hezbollah. They just took out the new designated leader. He lasted all of like 3 days. And the guy who was basically the only guy left to lead, it would have been in line to take over for Hezbollah, resigned and quit and disappeared. Like said, don't want to have anything to do with Hezbollah anymore. Apparently he'd like to live. So they've been making good gains against Hezbollah on a daily basis since they've gone into Lebanon over the last several days. Every day they are destroying large weapons caches. They say that they believe Iran has the capability to fire something like 1,500 munitions at one time. But just the other day, they fired 201, now they say, ballistic missiles at Israel. So what's that discrepancy? Well, it could be that they don't actually have as many as the pundits think. It could also be that Iran is holding off, keeping some launchers in reserve because they don't want to get them destroyed, keeping them deep underground. Or it could be that they're not functional. Hard to say. But what we have seen from them are the two largest ballistic missile strikes that at one time in world history. There's no ballistic missile barrage that took place in World War II. Even the V-2 rockets that Germany was sending over London did not hold a candle in terms of intensity to the attacks, the two attacks that have come from Iran that we've seen in Israel over the last year. The one in April and then the one last week. And in both of those attacks, 0 Israelis have lost their lives. There have been one injury in the first one to a little Bedouin girl, and then one guy who lost his life who was a Palestinian in the West Bank in the second one. And to just get your mind around that, what an incredible victory that is for Israel. It kind of boggles the mind. Now, we've seen the number of munitions ramping up coming out of the north day by day, and they've been falling deeper into Israel. But by comparison, the number of strikes that Israel has been doing on Lebanon is orders of magnitude larger. And in terms of damage and destruction, orders of magnitude greater. That means that there have been a handful of people injured by the strikes from Hezbollah. There have been a handful of Israelis who've been killed in those strikes, a couple of dozen, over the course of a year. But they're now into the thousands of casualties inside Lebanon. There have been 62,000 Israelis who have been displaced from their homes in the north. But there have been over 90,000, probably closer to 120,000 who have been displaced out of their homes in southern Lebanon. And probably 1 million total who have been displaced when you include those who have left voluntarily from other parts of the country. When I put up a map over at chuckholton.com today, And the map shows the locations of all the strikes on both sides. And what you'll notice is that there have been a lot more strikes in Lebanon as Israel has continued to pound those positions that threaten them. And the difference is that most of the strikes from Lebanon into Israel don't hurt anybody and don't destroy much. But most of the strikes that land in Lebanon hit what the Israelis are aiming at and are really damaging Hezbollah very severely. Now, they have a very large network. Hezbollah, they say, had 150,000 troops, that many rockets. Maybe that was an exaggeration. We don't know for sure because those numbers come directly from Hezbollah, from their late commanders, right? But suffice it to say that Israel has been steadily knocking out their launchers, taking out their weapons caches, and hurting the feelings of a whole lot of operatives inside Lebanon. So that means that they are without communications, they're without command, and in many cases, they're without weapons now. So the scenario has not been near as bad as they expected it to be as this thing has escalated. So are we in a regional war now? Yes, we are. This is a regional war. Many people are saying, when is World War III going to start? I've been saying World War III has already started. We're in World War III already. But it hasn't been as bad as everybody has said it would be for Israel. It has been worse than everybody said it would be for Hamas and Hezbollah. So that's the real point I want to get out here, is that if you ever wondered whether or not the Israelis are God's chosen people, all you have to do is look at the outcome of this conflict. On October 7th, 1 year ago, thousands, over 4,000 people broke through the fence from Gaza in 18 different places and flooded into Israel to loot and pillage and commit absolutely horrific acts and atrocities across the country. And at that, they succeeded to a horrible degree. They, like I said, the body count is over 1,200 people on that day. And they still don't even know exactly how many, because most of them were burned or mutilated beyond recognition. And they're still sifting through the ashes to try to find the remains of these people. However, if you look at the cost to the Palestinians and to the enemies of Israel over the last year, in Gaza alone, tens of thousands of people have lost their lives. Hundreds and easily thousands of buildings have been destroyed. There's very little in the way of services now. There wouldn't be any if it wasn't for the magnanimity of Israel. Israel itself has been allowing the aid to go into the Palestinians. Imagine how hard it would be for them if Israel wasn't so generous. So the human toll, the economic toll, the military toll on Gaza has been greater by large orders of magnitude than the toll that was taken on Israel, that they exacted on Israel. If you look at Hezbollah, the cost in human lives, in property destruction, in military material lost, is orders of magnitude greater on Hezbollah than it has been on Israel. The cost on the Iranians has been great. The cost on the Jordanians has been great. The cost on the Egyptians has been great. The Saudis. Everyone in this region has suffered because of what Hamas decided to do on October 7th. And In aggregate, all of those enemies of Israel have suffered much greater in terms of numbers of dead, economic costs, and material costs, and military costs than Israel has. If we just look at the number of people, the number of rockets that were fired at Israel since the beginning, more than 26,000 munitions have flown against Israel in the past 12 months. 26,000. And how many deaths have we seen? A handful. Every one of those is a tragedy. Every one of those should never have happened. There was a ceasefire on October 6th, and every death on either side lies right at the feet of Hamas and Iran and their proxies. Every single one. Because Israel wasn't planning this. Israel didn't have anything going on. Now, I want to address something that many people have brought up, and that is the amount of time that it took for the authorities to respond on October 7th a year ago. A lot of people have asked, like, what's up with that? Why did it take hours for them to get any troops down there? Well, we've come to find out over the intervening months, and actually just in the last few weeks, that Israel was actually massing forces on their northern border in anticipation of an attack from Hezbollah when the attack happened in the south. Now, I don't think there was a lot of coordination between Gaza and Lebanon, but that's one of the reasons why there was such a lag in the time. The other, it just comes down to hubris. Israel had systems in place down on the southern border, and they thought those systems would do a good job protecting them. And when those systems and procedures and strategies, intelligence and otherwise, started to flash red, they just ignored them. They thought, Hamas couldn't hurt us. And that, unfortunately, is almost a tradition with Israel. Israel has continuously underestimated their enemies. But they've decided not to do that anymore. So where are we today? I've got just a few more minutes before I have to go to dinner, so I want to start to wrap that up. The way it looks today, Israel is still engaged in Gaza. We were down there today and we saw the explosions. We heard the airstrikes. We could hear the small arms fire. So they're obviously busy still with the remaining members of Hamas. They say there's about one brigade left of Hamas now. That's Hamas saying that, by the way. Israel has troops on the ground in Lebanon, and they're expanding that beachhead. They are conducting dozens of strikes every day in Lebanon, also in Syria, even in Iraq. And I think very shortly we're going to see some heavy strikes against Iran directly. They've also struck just recently in the last week or two against Yemen and have crippled their ability to bring in fuel and energy. So Israel they've taken the gloves off, and it's taken them a long time. It's taken them quite a while. They were perhaps hoping that they could, through military pressure, get their hostages released from Gaza, and then this would all be over. But they've come to find out that their enemies only understand the projection of power, and that is the language they must speak to their enemies in. And this will not be over until they crush their enemies and cause them to beg for mercy. And that hasn't happened yet. And it likely won't happen for a long time. Israel has a long road ahead. As I mentioned, we talked to several Israelis today at the Nova Music Festival site. They were having concerts, and there were lots of just memorials set up and people that teary-eyed visiting the last resting places of their loved ones who died there. And in talking to them, they all have one thing in common, at least the ones I talked to, and that is that they're resigned to the fact that they have to pursue this to its end. They have to keep going until it's over. And they need the support of the world. They haven't done a good job at winning in the electronic battle space, the information battle space. They need to do a better job at that. Today was a day for us to remember why all of this started, because it's easy to forget. And going down to the Nova Music Festival site and seeing those forests of beautiful young faces, the photographs of those who perished there, reminded me of why Israel has to do this and why Israel has the moral high ground in so doing. And they need to be careful not to lose that moral high ground, but they also need to do a better job of getting the word out about the fact that they have the moral high ground. They have done a terrible job at that. And I hope that they will do better in the future. Now, let me quickly answer a couple questions. I saw that there were some going by here. I got to put my glasses on and figure out where I put them. Hello. You got some readers? Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Ah, okay. There we go. Now I can see what's going on. Thank you, Mac. Appreciate it. We'll just go back here. Let's see. I saw some questions. I'm just trying to scroll back in here a little bit. If you have a question, go ahead and ask it, please. Does Israel and America realize the implication of a nuclear-armed Iran? Yes, they do. Without a doubt, Israel understands the implications of a nuclear-armed Iran, and they will do whatever they have to do to keep that from happening. They have always said so, and there's no reason to believe that they wouldn't. Okay? Let's see here. I saw another question. Bean says, watching horrible things happen is extremely distressing. That's exactly why we have the Bible. When it becomes too much, turn to Jesus. Well, I would say turn to Jesus anyway, and then it won't become too much. Let's see. We're having cool conversations about demons. Thank you, Kimberly. Appreciate that. So, there's a lot of the footage that's being shown again of what happened on that day. And I think it is important to kind of look at it now and then and remind yourself of the depravity of what happened. What is the explosion in Iran desert just reported? Yeah, I heard that there was a 4-point-something earthquake in Iran, and I don't know exactly, some people are speculating that could have been testing a nuclear weapon, and we don't know. There are lots of earthquakes in Iran all the time, so that's not strange. But if it was a nuclear weapon, it's likely that intelligence agencies around the world would know the difference, and that would be in the news. This is not pre-recorded. I am live. Let's see. Okay, I think I've gone back as far as I can go here. If there's any other questions, please ask them now. It is horrible, and some people don't need to watch these videos of what happened on the 7th, but it certainly will help you understand why Israel has the moral high ground. And if you haven't seen those, then it might be harder for you to understand why. How can they win in the information war? Well, I can tell you how. That's a very good question, country boy. They can win in the information war by letting journalists do their job and get the word out. They have been very closed and very non-transparent with the press ever since day one. They put out videos every day, but the videos come from the IDF themselves. And since they're one of the belligerent parties, they don't hold the weight of a third party. And, you know, they're worried about biases on the part of the third parties, you know, the part of the journalists. But if they were open to a lot of journalists, that problem takes care of itself. If you just let journalists do their job and be that, you know, fourth estate, then the ones who are biased will get balanced out by the ones who are not. Amir Tsarfati thinks that Iran, Turkey, and Russia will get together after all the proxies are decimated. What do I think? I don't know. Amir is better on stuff like prophecy than I am. Opinion on major attack in the United States before election day or day of? Well, I'm glad you asked that, Minion Mossad. I think that there will be unrest around the election and after the election, no matter who wins. And that's why I just put out 2 booklets on my website, go to chuckholton.com, about how to prepare yourself to survive what comes after the election in the United States. These are based on U.S. military manuals, some obscure ones that are hard to find, that will help you prepare your house, your family, your church, and yourself to survive and to you know, get by after the elections, no matter who wins and no matter what happens. And oh, by the way, these things will also help you survive hurricanes, fires, floods, and lots of other conflict. But these are specifically tailored to surviving a loss of civility, a generalized uprising, or you know, sort of riots and that sort of thing in the United States, centered around these coming elections. Because I think we all know that these elections are going to be very contentious, and no matter who wins, about half the country is going to be very upset about it. So, all right, I've got to go to dinner. Thank you to all the people who are watching here in the live studio audience over there. And we will see you guys again next time. I'm going to be putting up some of the other videos that I shot today from the Nova Music Festival site and from the Gaza Strip. So keep watching the channel. Stay tuned. Take care.